Riders on the pro mountain biking circuit were stunned when a well-liked member of their group was the victim of a murder. When the investigation uncovered a web of lies, friends were looking over their shoulders, wondering who might be next.
I'm Kathy with a C.
And I'm Kathy with a K.
And this is Killer Destinations. Today's destination is Austin, Texas. Austin is located on the Colorado River in south central Texas and was founded in 1835 as the village of Waterloo. In 1839, it became the capital of the Republic of Texas and was renamed in honor of the man called the Father of Texas, Stephen F. Austin. Over the years, it has evolved from a quiet frontier town into a bustling state capital. And as the home of the University of Texas, Austin, it has grown into a research and development center for defense, high-tech, and consumer industries. Today, the city stands out as a unique blend of urban sophistication and natural beauty. The Texas State Capitol building, an architectural masterpiece, stands as a testament to the state's grandeur and rich political heritage. The Driscoll Hotel, one of Austin's oldest operating hotels, offers a glimpse into 19th century luxury. And areas like the Bremen Block Historic District showcase preserved Victorian homes. Austin is also widely hailed as the live music capital of the world and plays host every year to the South by Southwest Music Festival. But in 2022, Austin residents were left singing a mournful tune after a shocking murder of a visitor to their city.
Moriah Wilson, who went by Mo, was having a banner year. The 25-year-old was a standout in the fields of gravel biking and mountain biking and had been traveling around the country competing for the past couple of years. Now, Kath, I had to look up what gravel biking was because I had never heard of that before.
And I had to ask you because I had never heard of that before.
Which made me think maybe we should explain it at the beginning. So apparently gravel biking is very similar to mountain biking. It doesn't necessarily go up a mountain, but it's basically dirt roads, sometimes gravel roads, but dirt roads that just have a lot of rocks in them, some other obstacles.
Some other obstacles like what? Small chairs, human beings, animals?
I was thinking tree limbs and animals. But I'm actually just projecting.
Right, exactly.
It has to be harder than just that for it to have its own racing category.
Seriously, gravel biking sounds like, okay, racing on gravel sounds kind of hard.
Yeah, it's like you're in a gravel pit and you just can't go fast enough.
It's like a bad nightmare.
Exactly. It's like quicksand. We were just talking about that.
We were.
So back to Mo and her banner year. Kath, she had recently won or finished in the top 2 in all of her races. And in May of 2022, Mo was in Austin for another race, and she was staying at a friend's house while she was in town. And so, Kath, Mo actually got to town a little bit early because she'd met a guy named Colin Strickland on the racing circuit. They'd actually met the prior year in September 2021 in Idaho at a gravel racing event, and the two had actually just kind of clicked and became fast friends. Now, Colin was a little bit older. He was 36, and he'd been in the racing world for a long time, and he was super impressed with Mo's athleticism and talent. And so he basically was like, you know what? You've got great potential in this sport. I'm going to help you. I've been around a long time. I'm going to introduce you to as many people as I know, as many resources as I can connect you with, basically to help you like get sponsors, make money, and go as far and as high as you want to in this sport, which is actually really cool. Now, after this event in Idaho, Kath, it was just a month later, Mo ran into Colin again at another event in Bentonville, Arkansas. And after the race, Colin put together a group of female racers to go on like this short mountain bike ride all together. And his intent actually was just to give everybody a chance to get to know Mo and vice versa. So Kath, less than a week later, Mo is off to Austin for another race. And this just happens to be Colin's hometown. But something had actually changed between the time she saw him at the Arkansas race versus the time she saw him just less than a week later. Colin had broken up with his girlfriend. Colin had been dating a woman named Caitlin Armstrong. She was 35 years old, and they'd met on a dating app just 2 years prior. But, you know, as Colin explained to Mo, they'd always had a really tumultuous relationship. Now, despite this, in early 2021, so this was about 15 months into Colin and Caitlin's relationship, there was a big storm that hit Austin and her house got severe damage. So Caitlin moved into Colin's house and just never left. But it wasn't uncommon for them to be on and off, even though they were living together. And about the same time Caitlin moved in with Colin, they formed a business together restoring trailers, and Caitlin actually took over managing Colin's finances. Now, while Caitlin wasn't involved in the cycling world at the same level as Colin, she did ride bikes, just not at the top racing circuit level. She sometimes would go with him to his races, which she had actually done in Arkansas. But so, Kath, here's what happened. Caitlin goes to Arkansas with Colin, and this is the race where he organized a networking event for the other female racers to get to know Mo, and Colin also went on this ride, right? He's the facilitator. He's making sure they meet each other. But you know who he didn't invite? Girlfriend Caitlin.
Ruh-roh.
And she found out.
Right.
So they are on a long road trip home. It's about a 9-hour drive, and Caitlin lays into him, basically. That's him, not her.
And that's a direct quote.
Exactly. And you can quote her on that.
And you know how women are.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah, so that drive from Arkansas back to Texas would not have been fun.
Not at all. And by the time they got back to Austin, the relationship was donezo. Donezo.
So a week later, when
Mo strolls
comes
into town,
she's like, hey. And he's like, oh.
He's like, that is exactly what happened.
So Mo actually stopped in Austin because she was on her way to a race. And Colin, who no longer has girlfriend Caitlin, says, hey, how about if we ride together? So the two of them drive to Marfa, Texas, which is 430 miles west of Austin.
Okay, and doesn't MARFA sound like a government acronym? Like,
let's see. Yeah,
meet
military
aliens for
advancement.
recreational activities.
So anyway, Colin and Mo decide, yes, it's an excellent idea to travel 430 miles west together. And that's when things got boom chicka wow wow.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. But it turned out to be more boom than chicka wow wow. Because it didn't last but a couple weeks. So by the following month, and we're now in December of 2021, Colin is actually back together with the person who you never want to take a road trip with when she's angry, Caitlin Armstrong. Anyway, so despite the fact that the chicka wow wow went out of the boom and they no longer had a romantic relationship, Colin and Mo remained friendly and continued, texting each other fairly regularly and all that kind of stuff. And so Colin was always really sincere when it came to Mo's mountain biking and gravel racing and all that kind of stuff. And he talked very frequently with her about upcoming races. And he really wanted to introduce her to people that he thought would be helpful for her career and advertisers and all that kind of stuff. But he's texting her. And after a few months, he's like, Mo has ghosted me. That's really weird. She's not responding to any of my texts. So after a bit, he's like, I've got to clear the air. I don't know if I insulted her or whatever. So he calls her up and he's like, you know what? I don't know what's going on, but you haven't responded to any of my texts. And she was like, wait, what are you talking about? You're the one who ghosted me. You haven't responded to any of mine. And he was like, okay, well, that's weird. Let's just DM each other on social media and that's how we'll be in touch. So the two of them had regular communication with each other. I mean, they stayed friends and all that kind of stuff. They're in the same biking subculture. So fast forward May of 2022, and this is like 8 months after they met. So Mo DMs him and's like, hey, I'm going to be in town for the Gravel Locos race. Maybe we can meet up. And he's like, that sounds great. So she actually arrived a few days early so they could go out together. And Kath, they went to this place that seems so cool. It was a municipal swimming pool.
Wow, that's cool. I wish we had municipal swimming pools.
You're like, that sounds like a great date. Did they get to see 6-year-olds taking swim lessons?
And did they have a lot of chlorine that they had to wash off afterwards?
Were there 80-year-old ladies doing water aerobics? Anyway, this is why it seemed cool.
Okay.
Oh my God, this is so funny. Anyway, the pool was called Deep Eddy. So Deep Eddy is a historic man-made pool, and it was built in 1915. And it's the oldest swimming pool in Texas, and it's located along the banks of the Colorado River. So the pool is actually fed by a spring. So not only does the pool have beautiful crystal clear water, but it's also like 68 to 70 degrees all year long. And it has a bathhouse that was built during the Depression era. So I thought that was cool.
That is cool. It was probably one of the like federal public works programs that were going on trying to pull us out.
I bet you're right. It actually reminded me of the Sutros baths. Have you ever been to the Sutros baths?
I haven't.
San Francisco. It is super cool. I want to say they used to have these saltwater baths literally fed by the ocean, and they were enclosed structures. And I think they were from like the late 19th century, maybe. Anyway, if you go to this area in San Francisco and you're walking along the coast, you can literally see the remnants of the Sutros baths. It's really cool. So after Colin and Mo went swimming, they went to dinner at Pool Burger. I like their style, which was a burger trailer and tiki bar located above the Deep Eddy pool. Too bad we didn't know about these places when we were in Austin.
I agree. I had that same thought. Like, we totally would have gone to the pool. We definitely would have gone to Pool Burger. But instead, we were being visited by the boogeyman in the hotel room.
Right.
Now, if y'all haven't listened to episode 105, and that's the Menendez update, we talk in great detail about when the boogeyman came to our hotel room and how a hotel room full of true crime podcasters reacted to our screams.
So go back to the episode. We can't tell you the story.
We cannot.
Anyway, so Colin and Mo, they go swimming, they go to Pool Burger, and about 8 p.m. they leave. Now, Colin's a cool cat, so he's driving a motorcycle. Mo's riding on the back, and he takes her back to the place she's staying. The two hug goodbye, and Colin heads home. Now, Mo was staying with one of her girlfriends, whose name is also Caitlin. So
here's the difference, though. One Caitlin, Colin's girlfriend, is with a K, and the other one, friend of Mo, is with a C. However, we're not going to keep saying Caitlin with a K and Caitlin with a C because you would stop listening.
You would stop listening.
And we would stop talking.
Exactly. So Colin's girlfriend is going to be Caitlin because she started with Caitlin. Okay. And Mo's friend that she's staying with, we're going to call her Kate.
So Colin drops Mo off at Kate's apartment, and about an hour and a half later, Kate returned home. Kate walks into her apartment, so as soon as she opens her door, to the left is the bathroom, and she just happened to glance over, and on the floor, Mo was lying there in a pool of blood. So Caitlin calls 911, and she says to the dispatcher, I don't know what happened. I just got home. My friend, I don't know, but my friend's lying on the floor. There's blood everywhere. There's blood all over her face. There's a pool of blood behind her. I need an ambulance. And so the dispatcher was very calm, and he said, okay, do you know CPR? And she's like, no, I don't. And he said, okay, you're going to start chest compressions. I'm going to walk you through it. This guy's voice, Kath, was so calm, cool, and collected. Like, he had a voice for radio. Really, he needs to think about podcasting, except for there's no money in it.
Don't tell him.
I know. But he actually starts walking her through it, and he said, okay, I need you to be counting for me, and I want you to count out loud. I need to hear that you're doing it at the right amount you're supposed to. So she's counting, doing the compressions, and she's like, where are they? Where are they? And he's like, they're on their way. They're about to walk through your door. And sure enough, police get there first. And she's like, can I stop now? She really was like, she was freaked out.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. So the police take over. Paramedics get there shortly after that. And one of the police officers actually took Kate out of the house onto the front balcony where her apartment was. And the officer was trying to talk to Kate and find out what's going on. And she said, that's my friend Mo. I don't know what time she got home. I've only been here for a couple minutes. I don't know what happened to her. And they said, where was she? And she said she went out with her friend Colin. I know they were going to go out to dinner. So I don't know exactly when she got home. Like, she was freaking out, understandably. Now, once the EMS gets there and the other police officers can start looking around the apartment to find out what might have happened, the first thing they thought when they got in the room, because as Kate had described to 911, her face was a bloody mess. So they actually assumed she'd been beaten. But as they looked further around the apartment and in the bathroom, they found 3 shell casings. So now they know it actually wasn't a beating. She'd been shot. So as they're going through, the police are looking for. Was there forced entry on any of the doors or the windows? Is anything overtly missing? Is anything been rifled through? Any of that? And they could find nothing, Kathy. Nothing had been tampered with. Drawers didn't even look like they'd been opened and rifled through. It just looked like an ordinary home. But Kath, tragically, it really was just a few minutes after EMS personnel got there, Mo Wilson was pronounced deceased. It turned out she had been shot twice in the forehead, and then she was hit at center mass in her chest. And Kathy, they believed that what had happened was somebody had come in the house who Mo opened the door to, and they had shot Mo twice in the head. And when Mo fell, the intruder stood over her and fired the final shot into her chest. And the reason they believe this is because underneath Mo's body, there was a divot in the floor where the bullet was found. So, of course, Kath, they have to reach out to Mo's family to give them the horrific news. And Mo was actually raised with her brother Matt in Vermont. Her family was just, all of them sound like they were studly. Both of her mom and dad have been members of the U.S. ski team, although they didn't go to the Olympics. Her aunt, however, was a 2-time Olympic Nordic skier. And I don't mean they didn't go to the Olympics as a slight, because being on the U.S. ski team is still amazing. I don't want to make it sound
studly.
like I'm like, well, but they didn't make the Olympics.
Right.
No, totally studly. It was actually Mo's dad who taught her and her brother Matt how to ski. And knowing what we know about Mo's athleticism, it's not surprising she excelled at the sport. So she won a ton of awards as a junior alpine skier and absolutely had dreams of making it to the Olympics. So living in Vermont, Kath, she attended a school called Burke Academy. It equally divided education with ski lessons.
That is awesome.
After high school, Kath, Mo went to Dartmouth, where she was a member of the alpine ski team. And she apparently didn't just excel in sports, but also academics, because she graduated with a degree in engineering in 2019.
What a stud.
No kidding.
What a stud.
However, Mo had suffered several serious injuries while skiing, both in high school and then in college, and it pretty much derailed her future as an Olympic skier. But because she was so athletic, she actually had another sport that she'd loved since she was young, and it was cycling. So she did a really quick pivot and decided that that's what she was going to jump into, and soon became a standout in the fields of gravel and mountain biking. And after just 2 seasons doing this, Kath, she rose to the top of both mountain and gravel racing in the nation and had earned numerous victories and stood on a number of podiums.
All right, so back at the crime scene, investigators are scouring Kate's house because they're also like, why is there no evidence of any thievery or whatever? So they go to Kate and they're like, listen, tell us about Mo. Are you aware of her having problems with boyfriends or anyone? And Kate was like, Mo doesn't live in Austin. She's a dear friend and she knows a couple people locally, but there's no one here who dislikes her. And they're like, okay, well, who does she hang out with? And Kate said, well, she has this racing friend named Colin, and the two of them had dinner earlier, but, they're buddies. And so they're sort of like, they ask questions about Colin, but they're also like, what's going on here? This is weird. So they're searching the area, and then they're like, here's this bike cover, but there's no bike. So Kath, on the ground, literally outside this carport that Kate had, Mo's bike cover was just laying there, and the cops are like, where's
the bike?
Yeah, what's the deal? And Kate's like, I don't know. Mo typically kept her bike inside the house because it's freaking expensive, but...
And a carport's not going to provide any sort of,
protection
deterrent
from it.
From
Exactly.
theft. Yeah.
Anyway, but it wasn't in the house either. So the officer's like, okay, this is weird. Why would anybody steal her bike? Maybe the crook has her bike. We got to find the bike. So they expand the search to the outside of the house, and they're just going up and down the street and all this kind of stuff. And in this thickly wooded area that was actually covered with kudzu. Do you know what that is? It's like
a vine.
It's like super fast growing and
invasive.
Yeah, exactly. And Kate was like, yep, that's the bike. And so cops are like, kind of weird. Why is your bike over here?
And it wasn't that far away.
Yeah, but they took the bike into evidence. So as they're looking around Kate's apartment, they're like looking for the obvious thing. Ring doorbell camera, which one of Kate's neighbors had. So they knock on the door and they're like, hey, we see you have a Ring doorbell. Is it operational? Yes, it is. Can we have it? Yes, you can. So they get this footage and it's shocking. On the video, a woman is heard screaming, followed by 3 gunshots.
Actually, Kathy, what they found on that is that there was a delay between the second and the third boom. So that also lends credence to their thought that the perpetrator had stood over Mo and
while
shot
she
her in the
was
chest.
on the ground. So, Kath, now they have this video, this horrific video, but it provides the investigators with the exact time of Mo's murder. Also in the video, they see a black SUV driving away within moments of Mo's murder. So armed with this information, what do? They canvass the neighborhood. So the next day, they're knocking on every neighbor's door who has a video. And a lot of people, as you can imagine, happy to help, horrified by the murder, and handing over their footage. So detectives watch all of this video and they noticed this black SUV had driven by Kate's house several times during the day, slowing down as it passed her house. But there was never any angle that showed the license plate or the driver.
So, of course, Kath, the next morning, the first thing they do is they follow the information that Kate had provided about who Mo was with the night she was killed. So they go over to Colin Strickland's house. Can I say that something about him makes me want to punch him in the face?
Kathy had a visceral reaction to this guy.
I really did, and I don't know why. I'm sure he's a lovely person and I'm at fault. But anyways, so 2 Austin detectives showed up at Colin's home, and obviously the first thing they did was gave him the tragic news about Mo's death. He was clearly stunned and at a loss for words, but they were like, "We need your help. Tell us what happened last night." So he basically reiterated what Kate had already told police. "We went to the Deep Eddy pool, and then we went to Pool Burger for a bite to eat, and then I took her to Kate's apartment around 8:30, and I took off after that and went home." And Kath, based on the shots heard on the Ring camera next door, Mo was killed just a few minutes after Colin dropped her off. Now, as detectives are at Colin's house talking to him, they noticed that there were a couple of cars in the driveway, including a dark SUV. And when asked about it, Colin was like, "Not my car." And they're like, "Who is it?" And he said, "It belongs to my roommate." Well, technically, she's my on-again, off-again girlfriend. Her name's Caitlin Armstrong. So detectives were like, "Okay, you know what? We'd really like to talk to you down at the police station. Can you come in and let us interview you there?" And he's like, "Sure, happy to do it." So he toddles on down to the police station, as one does. So the detectives go into the room with him, and it's actually a male detective and one that I like to call a skirt detective. Because it was a female. She wasn't wearing a skirt. She was jeans, t-shirt, tattoos. But
It's a skirt.
That's how we're going to differentiate. Caitlin, detective skirt.
That's right.
Anyway, so one of the first things I talked to Colin about was, tell us about your relationship with Mo. Did you guys hook up? Is there something going on between you? Is that why you and Caitlin have been off and on? Is because Mo's in the picture as well? And he was like, no. Mo and I dated for a few weeks, but it just didn't work out between us. We were better off as friends. And the detective was like, "Oh, you know what? That explains it, because I heard that you weren't really putting the chicka wow wow with the boom." And I'm actually just guessing on that part.
And he was like, guilty as charged.
Exactly. Pure speculation.
I had boom, but no chicka wow wow.
Exactly. But anyways, Colin said, "We stayed friends. Caitlin was fine with it. We just, we texted a lot because I really thought she had a big career in racing and I wanted to do everything I could to help her." And they said, "Well, are you sure Caitlin was fine with it?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, because I was very open and upfront with her about my relationship with Mo. And in fact, I would show her text messages and make sure she knew what I was doing if I was doing stuff with Mo, just so that there wasn't a problem." So the male detective said, "What was Caitlin like? So you said she was fine with it. Did she have a easygoing temperament? Did anything ever set her off?" And he was like, "No, I never had a problem with her. She never flew off the handle, anything like that." And they're like, "Well, we told you that the SUV in your driveway that belongs to her kind of looked like the one we saw in the videos in front of Kate's apartment. Does that not concern you at all?" And Colin actually kind of got his hackles up and he was like, "No, I would not be living with someone if I thought they were capable of murder. So back off." And so detectives were like, okay, that's all well and good. One last question. Do you guys own any handguns? And Colin said, yes, as a matter of fact, we do. And I bought them about 6 months ago. I got 2 9mm handguns. Caitlin and I had talked about doing it for a little bit, but Caitlin was actually really worried because there had been some recent road rage incidents around Austin. And, she did like to ride mountain bikes. And sometimes she was off by herself and wanted to make sure she had some sort of protection. So I got a gun for each of us, and we would go to the range together every couple of weeks just to make sure that we knew how to handle the guns. And so Austin PD was like, okay, you know what? We're going to get a warrant. We want to see the guns. And he's like, okay, no problem. I'll get them to you. And that's exactly what happened. Now, after their interview with Colin, though, detectives now wanted to talk to Caitlin Armstrong. They wanted to do a little digging on her before they went to see her, and they pulled up her records. And it turned out, Kath, she had an active warrant in the system. And it was for theft of service. And I know what it sounds like, but I looked it up anyway just to make sure I was correct. And basically, it's something that happens like if you dine and dash at a restaurant, or someone provides a service for you and you don't pay them for it, your check bounces, your credit card doesn't go through, whatever it is. And so that's what the warrant was for. So the police, instead of asking her to come into the station, they actually went to the house and put her in handcuffs and put her in an interview room with skirt detective. There was no male detective in here. So Kath, they're sitting there talking, and I saw a video of this interview, and it was cracking me up because Caitlin had her panties in a wad because she was really upset that she had been, and this is what she said, handcuffed and marched to the police station in front of all of Austin.
Was she a total prom queen?
Totally. But anyways, so she's sitting in a chair and just relaxed as all get out. I mean, just her body language. You could tell she was tense because she kept like clenching her hands. Mm-hmm. But she's talking to the skirt detective, and the detective's asking her questions. And 2 things were weird. The skirt detective was talking like she was a Valley girl, and they were besties. And Caitlin was answering in a like, I took too much Xanax kind of way. And it was driving me crazy because the skirt detective would say something, and instead of answering what the detective asked, Caitlin would say, I really want to know what the warrant is for. And I'm like, can I speed her up?
Can I hit her on the back and cough some of those words out quicker?
It's everything I am not.
Right.
Like, I would have had 5 sentences out in the time that she said that.
You're like, you're under arrest because you can't talk fast enough.
Exactly. Here's the thing, though. So the skirt detective's talking to her, couldn't answer anything about the warrant, and Caitlin was getting really tense about it. And after just a few minutes, there's a knock at the interview room door. So the skirt detective gets up, and she comes back, and she says to Caitlin, oh, you know what? Turns out that wasn't you on the arrest warrant. It was your name. But Caitlin Armstrong isn't that uncommon a name, but the birth date was wrong. So you're good. You're clear on the warrant. Anyway, let's talk about Colin. And Caitlin said, I feel like maybe I should get an attorney before I talk to you. And skirt detective said, oh, yeah, you absolutely could. I mean, I'm not saying you can't, but let's talk about Colin, because the reason we're here is because Mo was killed and he dropped your name several times. But you know how guys are? Like, sometimes they just make stuff up when they don't know the real answer. And I want to hear from you, like, what really happened. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding at all. I
would have been totally putting sticks in my frickin' ears listening to that conversation.
But I loved the detective because she's got full sleeves on both arms. Like, she's in jeans and a t-shirt, hair's in a ponytail, and her body language transformed. She's talking with her hands and whatever it was. She was doing a great job.
Yeah.
And so the detective said, well, you know what? Let me just ask you this, though. Colin said you had some issues with Mo. And Caitlin said, I never. I had no problem with her at all. Actually, she said it slower than that, but I can't do that again. And then she said, if I don't have the warrant, can I just leave? And the detective would then say, okay, but let's talk about this first. So the problem is that Caitlin was never saying, I want to leave.
Yeah, I got to get it.
Can
I'm
I
leaving.
leave?
I'm leaving.
Right.
Yeah.
I want an attorney. She never said that. She said, should I? So all you folks, get an attorney. Make sure you say it the right way.
Right.
So Caitlin then says again, I think I want to leave. And the detective said, really don't do that, because then we only have one side of the story to go on. And we want your side. I don't want Colin to be the only one whose story is told. And then the skirt detective dropped a bomb on Caitlin. She said, the big question we have for you, though, is your SUV was seen next to the apartment where Mo was staying. Can you give me a logical explanation for that? And Caitlin this time says, if I'm free to leave, I want to leave. So the detective tried one more time, said the same thing, and Caitlin said, if I'm free to leave, I want to leave. And the detective was like, see yourself out.
Vaya con Dios, sister.
Exactly. Hasta la vista, baby.
The next day, which was 2 days after Mo was murdered, Colin is like, Caitlin, what happened yesterday at the police station? So she's like, I'm happy to tell you what happened, but I was super freaked out by how aggressive these detectives were, and I think they might be bugging the house, so we got to get out of here. So the two of them go to a coffee shop where they can talk, and Colin was like, where were you on May 11th, which of course was the night Mo was murdered? And Caitlin was like, I went to a waxing appointment, I then went to yoga class, and then I visited a healer. And so Colin was like, okay, listen, you should write everything down while it's still fresh in your brain so that you have a record of it to refer to, because you might not remember in 6 months that you went to a healer and to yoga class. So be sure and write it down. So as it turns out, their house wasn't bugged, but Caitlin was definitely being monitored. Detectives had obtained a warrant to get her cell tower information. They were following her. They were monitoring her whereabouts using her cell phone. So they see that she goes to a CarMax dealership. And what they find out is that day, so this is literally the day after she was interviewed by them, she sold her 2012 Jeep SUV for $12,000. Okay, so now they're like, holy crap, this means she has a lot of cash. Is she going to leave? So they find out that she bought a plane ticket for the following day to go to New York, and they knew that she had a sister there. So they tracked her in real time to make sure she got on the plane, and they actually watched the airport security feed with her, toddling on through the terminal with her yoga mat clearly tucked under her arm, which cracked me up.
It's a good way to track somebody.
It's like, that's her carry-on, her yoga mat.
It's her self-soothing teddy bear.
I guess so. The healer didn't work.
Well, he wasn't portable.
So again, they're still tracking her by her cell, and they know she got off the flight and she went to her sister's apartment. Then she dips with more than $12,000 in cash. So detectives now have a problem. Caitlin's phone was off, so they could not track her location. And they checked everything. Flight logs and bus schedules and train schedules and car rentals, all this kind of stuff looking for her. But she was nowhere to be found. And then Austin police reached out to the sister, and it turns out the sister said, oh, this is interesting. I'm missing my passport. So they only checked flight information and travel information under Caitlin's names.
Which makes sense.
Yes, exactly. But once they entered her sister's name, bingo. Caitlin had left New York 4 days after her arrival using her sister's name and passport to get on a plane to Costa Rica. Okay, so now the Austin Police Department are like, okay, we got to bring in the U.S. Marshals. We got to figure this out.
And so really, Caitlin should have just given up then.
Exactly.
We know that.
Because what did they search?
They searched every farmhouse, doghouse, hen house, and Waffle House.
Right.
Although my guess is they probably actually searched the island first.
Right.
But then they searched the Waffle House.
I would have stopped at the Waffle House, had a full-blown meal with sausage, and then continued the search.
Well, and I'm sure that's what they did.
What was that movie?
The Fugitive.
The Fugitive, yeah. Anyway, so they go to Costa Rica, and they immediately have a difficult time because Costa Rica is loaded with tourists.
And they don't stay.
Exactly. And so they start passing out flyers. They're looking in hostels, cafes, all this kind of stuff, all the places a tourist might go. And they're showing, do you recognize this woman? Blah, 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 blah. They searched high and low. They found no trace of her. So they made one last ditch attempt. They knew that she loved yoga.
Wow, how'd they find that out?
I know. This cracks me up. Like the yoga mat tucked under her arm on the plane. I love that little detail. Anyway, so they basically were like, you know what? We are going to advertise for a yoga instructor and we're going to see if she comes forward to apply for this job. So they put an ad on Facebook from a youth hostel, which cracks me up. Like, hi, a hostel operator looking for yoga instructor.
We've got people here paying as little as they can, but you know what they will pay for? Yoga.
We have a bunch of tourists who need to be stretched out.
Well, traveling is stressful.
They are not bendy at all. So anyway, they put this ad on Facebook and someone answers it, and it was Caitlin. But she had totally changed her appearance. It turns out, with her money from selling her car, she had several plastic surgeries done in Costa Rica, including a nose job, lip enhancements, and a brow lift.
She dropped $6,000 on those.
Yeah. Anyway, she had also cut her hair short and dyed it brown. And she had really long, kind of wavy, flowing, blondish hair, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was really pretty, actually. Anyway, that's why nobody recognized her. She didn't look like herself. So on June 29, 2022, Caitlin Armstrong was detained on an immigration violation by Costa Rican law enforcement and escorted back to Texas by the U.S. Marshals, where she was charged with murder. She'd been on the run at this point for 43 days.
But what do we call somebody who doesn't just dip once, but they dip twice?
A double dipper.
Exactly. And that's what Caitlin turned out to be. On October 11th, 2023, so this is more than a year since she was brought back from Costa Rica, and just 19 days before trial began, she attempted to escape from custody while they were taking her to a doctor's office. And Kath, this had to have been the lamest attempt at escape that I've ever seen in my whole entire life. And I don't mean her. I mean the jailer or the court person or whoever was with her. It was like slow motion Three Stooges action.
There was a video on YouTube and honestly, it was hysterical. I felt like I was being punked. Like, this is the escape video. Like, honestly, it was funny to watch.
It looked like it was staged, didn't it? It was so funny.
It totally looked like, because she's in striped pants and she's running, she's quick, she's trying to climb a wall or whatever. And the prison guard,
I don't know. It must have been a prison guard.
Driver of the bus, I don't know who it was.
Yeah, going up this little embankment from a sidewalk to a wall that Caitlin was trying to get over.
Yeah.
What do we call them? The jailer, the court,
yeah,
or the
jailer.
Driver. Like every time this person, I think it was a female actually, but every time they took a step, they tripped and fell into the vines.
Yeah, and like Caitlin couldn't get over the wall, so she was trying to like hide behind a tree. Like the whole thing, I was like, is this real? It was like watching Wile E. Coyote, I swear to God.
Or like a British sketch comedy from the 70s.
Right. Oh, that's true. That's exactly what it looked like.
Anyway, after like 5 or 10 minutes of this comedy of errors, Caitlin was apprehended again. Trial began November 1st of 2023. This is just 18 months after Mo Wilson was killed. The prosecution's case was pretty much circumstantial evidence, right? They have all the GPS records from Colin's and Caitlin's cell phones the night that Mo was killed. Records from Caitlin's cell phone that indicated her phone was turned off precisely during the time in which Mo was killed. And then they actually were able to show that Colin's phone around that same time was near his home in South Austin. So it kind of took Colin out of the picture. But then, Kathy, this was interesting. Records from Caitlin's Jeep showed that the night that Mo was killed, at 8:40 p.m., her car was turned off. So all of the electrical components stopped working, like the tracking stopped working. At this exact time, Caitlin's Jeep was seen by one of the Ring doorbell cameras in the alley adjoining Kate's apartment where Mo was staying. And then like 40 minutes later, just 2 minutes after the neighbor's doorbell captured Mo's time of death, Caitlin's Jeep starts heading to the home she shared with Colin after leaving this alley right behind Kate's apartment. Now, according to Colin's testimony at the trial, Caitlin actually returned home in her black Jeep, parked in her driveway like usual. She came in the front door, and Colin said that her demeanor was calm and like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. And Kath, there were also some text messages that were introduced. You know, remember, Caitlin had told the skirt detective that she had no animosity towards Mo at all, that she was fine. But there were some text messages between Caitlin and Colin where Caitlin would badmouth Mo when Caitlin knew Mo was in town and hanging out with Colin. And then one of Caitlin's friends actually got to the stand and said during one of their many breakups, this friend had asked Caitlin, what would you ever do if Colin got serious with some other woman when you were broken up? And Caitlin's response was, I'd kill her. And then, Kathy, just two other quick things that came out at trial that I thought were interesting. Remember, you had actually talked about the fact that after that month of the boom chicka wow wow, and then they broke up,
right?
That Colin and Mo were texting each other kind of frequently, and each thought the other had ghosted them because they weren't hearing back in response to the text messages they were sending. It turned out, Kath, that Caitlin knew Colin's cell phone password, so she blocked Mo's number so that he wouldn't see any texts or calls from her. But remember we talked about the warrant that was used to arrest Caitlin in the first place to bring her down to the station to be interviewed about the case? And remember the detective said that it was a mistake because the birth date was wrong, so it couldn't have been that Caitlin Armstrong? It actually turned out that it was that Caitlin Armstrong, and the theft of service turns out that Caitlin dipped on paying for Botox.
So she gets Botox and she's like, I'll be back. I got to go to the bathroom. And she just like leaves.
Or bill me, something like that. I don't know. But she never paid for it. It was over $500, I think. It must have been, because I don't know if they do it for $50. But yeah, so they filed a complaint against her.
Oh my.
So the warrant really was good. My theory is, and I have no proof, it is pure speculation on my part, I'm wondering if the detectives who weren't in the room saw that Caitlin was just focusing on the warrant, and they were like, we got to get the warrant out of her head. Let's tell her it's not real.
That way we can talk about what we really want to talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, as long as you're here,
right?
Let's talk about this. Now, no proof, don't know, total speculation.
But it would fit into the movie scene.
It would. You know what? When a
would.
movie's made of this, actually, I think a movie has been made of it. They didn't ask us to consult on it.
Okay, so the prosecution had all this really good circumstantial evidence, but it was circumstantial. And the defense was like, hell no. During opening statement, the defense told the jury, hey, look, this circumstantial evidence is all well and good, but they don't have any direct evidence that actually proves our client, Caitlin Armstrong, was using that Jeep. And they used all of the videos to basically support their argument. None of the videos that were admitted into evidence showed who was actually driving the car that night.
Or that day when it kept going past the apartment.
Exactly. And so Caitlin's attorneys were completely pointing the finger at Colin, saying the prosecution arrested and charged the wrong person. He had access to her car. He had his own key fob, in fact, and he was the one who purchased the guns and made Caitlin go to the shooting range with him. And the police never tested the gun used to kill Mo for DNA. So it turns out they were actually able to match one of the two guns Colin purchased to the murder of Mo.
Right. Using the bullets that had been removed, they were able to trace the ballistics, and it matched with one of the guns perfectly.
So the defense attorneys made a big deal out of the fact that, hey, these guns were never tested for DNA. However, the prosecution did have one piece of physical evidence that they presented at trial that held sway over the jury. It turns out they swabbed Mo's bike. They found Caitlin's DNA on the bike seat. And the defense was like, well, hold on a second. This was transfer DNA. Caitlin's DNA would have been all over Colin. They lived together. And we know that Colin was into biking. And we know that he went out with Mo that night. This is transfer DNA. But, of course, the prosecution expert said, nay, nay, fair maiden, not transfer DNA. I'm sure that was a direct quote from the trial transcript.
I believe it is, yes.
Exactly. But the jury didn't buy what the defense was selling, and 2 hours into deliberation, they convicted Caitlin Armstrong of the murder of Mo Wilson. And during the sentencing phase, Mo's mother, Karen Wilson, spoke. And she looked directly at Caitlin Armstrong and she said, "You shot me in the heart. All of the people who loved her, you pierced their hearts." Mrs. Wilson then told the courtroom that she would have done anything to stand in the way of the bullets. She said Moriah didn't deserve a death like that. From the day she was born, she had a force in her. She lived as if every day was her last, and she lived it so fully. She never wasted any time. It's as if she knew her life would be cut short. In late November of 2023, Caitlin Armstrong was sentenced to 90 years in prison and is now serving her time at the Texas State Prison for Women in Gatesville.